Welcome to Lemora's Cards and Horrors, the best store for all your gaming and haunting needs. I'm Matthew, and today I'm going to be talking about a new series here on the channel called Lemora's Battle Box. For this series, I'm going to build 4 commander decks per video made to play against each other to get a certain playstyle, then break them down for you here. These deck boxes are perfect for people who maybe have been a bit burned by mismatched pods, groups who aren't as interested in building and just want to get a couple games in, or anyone who wants to try something new with their pod and maybe have everyone upgrade their list to make them their own. For this first episode, I've got 4 new commanders and I've built each of them at a similar power level to get some very combat heavy, no infinite combos, but also no mercy gameplay. The rule 0 these decks are designed for is a pod that isn't worried about taking a player out too quickly because each deck is trying to take everyone out quickly. The decks aren't playing at a very high power level, but do have access to strong ramp like Mana Crypt and Gaia's Cradle to get the ball rolling quickly. The list I'm showcasing today are Light-Paws Voltron, Group-slug Reanimator Hidetsugu, Prowess Ken, and a rampy, beat-down Kodama of the West tree list. Let's take a deeper look at them. So up first we have Light-Paws Voltron. Light-Paws is a new mono-white commander that's a 2/2 for 2. Her effect is whenever we cast an aura and have it enter the battlefield, we can search up an aura that costs the same or less and put it into play on Light-Paws. Light-Paws being very cheap at only 2 mana and having the ability to repeatedly search very flexibly makes this both a very consistent deck and also one that rewards a strong knowledge of the list. A lot of the key cards you'll be searching for each game are Ethereal Armor and All That Glitters, which will both give you large buffs based on your other enchantments. But there are also some cards in here that are more niche in use, but will give you some good payoffs if you know what you're up against, with Mask of Law and Grace being especially good in this pod. For the early game, we're going to be looking to get Light-Paws out with a few auras, but you'll find she quickly explodes in size and can be swinging for lethal commander damage very early. Some games she'll get removed and you'll have to rebuild, and you may be able to use some of the more powerful aura synergy combos we have here, like Celestial Mantle with Light of Promise, which will keep doubling your life total and giving the enchanted creature +1/+1 counters equal to that amount. We also have synergies like Pariah and Timely Ward, which will leave us with an indestructible creature that takes damage we would take for us. A lot of these would be tough to use in other lists, but because we can cast one and get the other out of our library into play for free, Light-Paws makes these powerful combinations very consistent. The rest of the 99 is rounded out with good card draw creatures for our strategy like Esper Sentinel, SRAM, and Core Spirit Dancer, as well as some aura cost reducers. We have some typical white removal, some of the white counter spells to protect our aura heavy creatures, and a couple land search effects to help us get Serra's Sanctum into play to get massive amounts of mana. One thing to keep in mind is that while Light-Paws requires what you search for from her ability to be placed on her, the aura that triggers her can have any target, meaning we can buff up an Esper Sentinel for better draw, or use Swift Reconfiguration on an opponent's commander to search for Hyena Umbra. We have a lot of powerful options. In this pod, what you're going to have to watch out for is the white removal Kin will be playing that we can't protect against as easily, and Kodama's ability to go wide enough that Light-Paws may be unable to get through as easily. You'll need to watch out for Hidetsugu's access to pretty consistent creature removal with its tap ability, but once you get Light-Paws big enough, you should be able to handle that. We are in white, and while ramp isn't too much of a problem with our low CMCs and doubling value on each aura, you can find yourself in a situation where you're low on cards if you aren't getting to draw from your other creatures. Look to close out the game early, and if you're unable to, look to take out the player who has their value engine set up the most. Next up we have Hidetsugu. This is a very interesting new commander that kind of pulls you in a couple different directions as far as deck building goes. I chose to go for a group slug list that uses his top deck ability to deal direct damage, running some bigger creatures we can either put into play using reanimate abilities, or some of our creature synergies that give us mana advantage off of damage dealt like Rakdos or Neheb. This list is probably the most mid-rangey of the ones in this pod, which allows it to have some games with explosive starts like an early Emrakul, or grind value against the other decks as we drain their health totals. This deck offers you a lot of different ways that you can approach the game. You can try to set up engines like Felden of the Third Path with a big creature in the graveyard, Florian to keep searching your library every turn, or Neheb to turn damage into ramp. It isn't leaning too heavily into Hidetsugu's first ability, but we do still have the option to sack our smaller creatures or in response to removal to get some more consistency off the top. And we have cards like Bitter Blossom to continually get creatures to sack, and of course top deck tutors like Vampiric Tutor and Imperial Seal to hit exactly what you want. We also have a backed up win con with infect damage. Using Tainted Strike for one big infect hit to kill is definitely possible, and you can put Phyresis on your commander to start doing consistent unblockable infect damage around the table. In the 99, we have some of the few protection options offered in these colors, like Deflecting Swat and Bolt Bin, which have the benefit of having higher costs to deal more damage with the commander. We have Graveyard Tutors as well as mill effects you can target yourself with to get more options for our reanimation package. We also have a few options to make sure the expensive creatures don't get stuck in your hand, with Sneak Attack and Ilharg the Raise Boar, which can each be used to very quickly take out an unsuspecting player. Feed the Swarm can help you remove pesky protection auras off Light-Paws, and Toxic Deluge doubles as a way to kill her even with Indestructible, as well as just being a good option since you'll be running the biggest creatures at the table. The biggest weakness you may run into with this deck can be consistency. Hidetsugu can whiff on his ability without top deck manipulation, and in some games you'll have to rely on your other engines and beats to get you ahead. The advantage this gives you though is that your deck is much less reliant on its commander than your opponent's, so while they may have consistent ability to go off with their commander focused strategies, well-timed removal from you can be enough to ensure that you're able to set up while they have to rebuild. You want to ensure you have a blocker for Ken and Light-Paws, though Light-Paws will be harder since you can get protection from your colors so easily. If you can outvalue the two of them and ensure Kodama can't go over top of you in the late game, you'll be in good shape. The third list in our matchup is Prowess Ken. This is a really unique commander that focuses on pumping up his power to cast sorcery spells from your hand for free, pushing you to spell sling a bit more than your traditional Voltron style build. This list looks to get Ken out early and use his ability in tandem with extra combat spells and other powerful sorceries to build a massive advantage with very little upfront mana cost. The list runs a lot of cantrips and other cheap spells to be able to quickly look for more cards as you buff Ken up, but one of the strongest parts of this list is Ken's already pretty high power of 4 allows you to most turns very easily freely cast 4, 5, and 6 cost sorceries. This is probably the most explosive list here. While it may not get the commander as big as Light-Paws, it has the chance to easily get the most value in the biggest swing turns. Cards like Relentless Assault, Seize the Day, and World at War are going to be some of your biggest focuses as they'll allow you to keep hitting opponents and getting more spells. But some of the hardest workers here are cards like Wheel of Fortune, Reconstruct History, and Past in Flames, letting you keep the value going and your hand full of new sorceries to play for free. Cards like Farewell and Chandra's Ignition let you keep your opponents on the back foot and can be back-breaking when used at the right time. Ken is the list you want to use if you want a relatively straightforward game plan that can still change from game to game and rewards your good sequencing with very powerful payoffs. In the rest of the 99, you'll have access to other powerful creatures who take advantage of your prowess focused list, like Monastery Mentor, Dragon's Rage Channeler, and Stormkiln Artist. Knight of the White Orchid and Ragavan can help you ramp as you develop your board, and Lizard Blades and Lion Sash double as buffs for Ken and decent creatures on their own, with Lion Sash being able to deal with Hidetsugu and Light-Paws trying to work with their graveyards. You'll have a pretty versatile removal suite with ways to deal with each of the 3 other decks' main strategies, and should be able to consistently be churning through your deck with the rituals and draw spells. This is a very commander focused build, so the downside for having arguably the most powerful and explosive commander at the table is that he's very likely to draw negative attention, and without Ken in play you may struggle to get into a winning position. You'll probably want to get him into play early, building advantage off of free sorceries, and get yourself into a position where you can either remove the most threatening other player or ensure you have the resources to rebuild if Ken gets removed. Balancing between going all in on your turn and keeping up resources for protection will be key in games where you aren't able to very quickly finish things off. Lastly, in today's battle box, we have Kodama modifications. This list looks to turn your beats into ramp by modifying your creatures with counters, auras, or equipment, and getting lands off of Kodama's ability. This deck will be looking to set up a little in the first few turns, but it can very quickly get some explosive land ramp. If you're the type of player who loves cards like Avenger of Zendikar, this list is definitely for you. This is probably the most powerful synergy in the deck, since each plant will be a modified creature giving you more lands and more counters. Even with just 1 or 2 attackers though, the amount of consistent ramp and land synergies you'll be building value off of will make it difficult for the other decks to keep up. Cards like Tireless Provisioner, Tireless Tracker, and Rampaging Balos get huge here with you putting 3 to 5 lands into play per turn in the mid game. Kamal works double duty here, both as a finisher for a developed board, but also a payoff to your massive land count, with Multani and Ashaya also taking advantage of it. The easy to overlook part of Kodama is that it's going to give all your modified creatures trample as well, making it very difficult for the other decks to prevent your damage and the ramp you'll get from it, and is going to make it even easier to convert those buffs you're giving out into a win. The deck runs smoothly with effects that are able to help get your creatures modified and simultaneously take advantage of your ramping, like Blackblade Reforged and Blanchwood Armor. Overall, this is going to be a naturally aggressive and proactive version of the classic mono green land ramp strategies that's going to go over top of your opponent's creatures for the win. Some other notable cards in the 99 are the 2 Nissa Planeswalkers, who will be able to both provide modified creatures as well as potentially give huge synergistic buffs to your other cards if you're able to get their ultimates off. There are a good number of turn 1 and 2 ramp plays between the Dorks and Rocks to get you a Kodama as fast as turn 1 but consistently on turn 2, with a common play pattern being Dork, then Kodama, then modifying them both and swinging turn 3 to give you a huge mana boost that keeps getting you other benefits. Cards like Keen Sense, Mask of Memory, and Hunter's Insights are going to help turn those swings into cards as well, and with bigger payoff like Rishkar's Expertise and Return of the Wild Speaker, you're going to have games where your mana and card advantage gets out of control fast. When piloting this list, you'll need to keep in mind that you're somewhat limited with your targeted removal. You should have a good chance at dealing with Light-Paws enchantments, but if Hidetsugu gets out too many big threats, you're going to have to force them to block to consistently get rid of them. While this list isn't quite as commander-centric as Ken or Light-Paws, you're still going to really want to keep Kodama in play, so keeping up mana for protection like Tamio Safekeeping and Heroic Intervention may sometimes be better than going all in on your turn. You want to focus on outlasting Ken, hitting key cards that Light-Paws needs, and getting bigger than Hidetsugu to really crush the rest of this pod. And those are our 4 decks for this episode of Lemora's Battle Box. If you and your play group try these out, I think you're going to have a great time. Let me know which deck you're excited to play, if you're interested in more Battle Box videos like this, and of course make sure to subscribe so you won't miss any future videos like this or my Commander video essays. Thank you so much for watching, and keep enjoying the things you love.